This is Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks, and I'm here with Gert Drapers. Good to see you again, Gert.
Hey, Richard, how are you doing?
I'm real good. I keep calling it Data Dude because I can't remember the real product name. It's like Visual Studio
Team System Database Edition, GDR.
Right.
Right.
It's like, and what's the GDR stand for?
General Distribution Release, or the Gert Drapers release, I'm not sure.
Gert Drapers release, yeah, I like that. But now, it's not going away, but there's not going to be a separate sort of release for the database edition?
Correct. So we talked to customers, right? It's like, and they said, it's like, well, we already have this developer edition. It's like, what is the real distinction between a developer and a data developer?
Right.
So, well, besides, the only reason was like, well, we're a separate team.
Yeah.
So we needed to have our own box. So right now, it's like, so we merged with the developer edition, which is the largest Visual Studio Team Suite SKU that exists, or edition that exists. So people that have developer edition today actually are already entitled to get the database edition today. The database edition people are entitled to get the database or the developer edition for that reason. And in the next release in 2010, it's like those two things will be merged.
Merged together. So 2008, there are separate SKUs, but they're now licensed together.
Yes. So
and in 2010, it'll all be one SKU.
So people that have the existing SKU set up, it's like we decided to make it available to them today, so they don't have to wait for that benefit till 2010.
That's great.
So,
So, I mean, we're putting it into developer edition, so it's a developer's product. I mean, there's an interesting line here, and I know Kim Tripp has been on this topic pretty heavily lately, where we have, on one end of the scale, the traditional DBA, the guy who's concerned about security and backup and those sorts of things, doesn't worry too much about development at all. And there's the other end, the developer. And then there's these sort of guys in between. I mean, you describe the product as a database developer product. Who's actually using it? Like, are DBAs interested in this product, or is there a specific kind of database developer?
Well, if there was, it's like, I think my management would be happy, because it's like, it would be a very clearly identifiable target audience.
I need that guy.
So the answer is like, it's all over the place.
Right.
It's like, right in this conference, is like at SQL Connections, is like we presented to a mix of audience, is like mainly to DBA folks, and they're completely new to this.
Right, and this is a whole new environment for them.
It's a new environment, it's a new approach, it's a new concept. It's like storing your schema as source code that is like new to them.
Right.
And they see the benefits, but then they immediately ask the rightful question, is like, well, so how does this relate to SSMS? Because that's what my daily work environment looks like, or other tool sets.
And SSMS it does relate. They're fundamentally the same shell.
Yeah, they're fundamentally the same shell. So it's like there is work going on with the SQL Server team to actually start bridging those worlds and get that closer together. But it's like that takes time. So right now, is like, if we look at the customer base or the user base, it's mainly that guy in the middle that you described.
Right.
It's like, it's the jack of all trades, I call them.
Yeah.
It's like they do database work, they do developer work, or they're in charge of maintaining both, and it's like they are bridging that world. They do have understanding about development, they have understanding about data development, and that's the largest group of users today. And we're starting to bleed into the DBA world right now.
Right.
But it's like, that is like with little baby steps.
Yeah, bit by bit they come along. Well, and the idea that all of our source code, because our schema is source code, and our stored procedures and views and so forth, being stored in the same place, being backed up the same way, I think it actually has an interesting implication on build, just because for so long, really building a true build of your app, the database guys were always handled separately.
Right, and that is exactly, so with the introduction of the GDR, where we now have this deployable unit, that you can take the output of build and actually deploy that together with your application. That is the biggest attraction, as I may say, is like for most people. It's like the fact that they can take that distribution, stick it in their MSI or on their CD or in their memory, on the memory stick, take it up to their server and deploy it as part of their application. That is huge.
Okay.
It's also huge from a development point of view in terms of continuous integration. Right? It's like, which build are we working on? Is my app tier build in sync with my data tier builds?
Right.
It's like, now it's like the next step that we need is like we need to have guarantees from the server that is like I'm actually on this version, right? And so we can do a handshake between the app tier and the data tier.
And this is not the version of the database per se; it's the version of the schema.
Right. It's the model version that is shared, right?
Yeah.
It's like so now it's like we're still working on 2 entities on each side, and we need something to bridge that, right? It's like so that model representation that could be used on both sides, right? And it's like, and there are initiatives inside Microsoft that actually are
just to have a version number. I mean, the idea that we would generate an error that's coherent, the error of that's the wrong version of the database.
Yeah.
Because
ultimately,
as the database guy, I end up figuring that out the hard way.
Yes.
This broke and that didn't break. And oh, those are all new features. Oh, this table's wrong.
Exactly. And it's like it would be great if we can have a coherent end-to-end infrastructure that says it's like my application is based on this model.
Right.
My object technology that links over this, like either if it's Link or EDM, doesn't matter. It's like, but that consumes that model, can make assumptions about what is in the on the back end. So at connect time, we can do this handshake and exactly come up with this unified error message saying it's like, well, there's
a mismatch.
There's a mismatch. Here. It's like, how do I express versioning, right? So I have a lower level version client and I upgraded my server. Is that supposed to work or not? You should be able to express that as policy.
Right.
And it's like, and all the activities inside the server that they're deploying with regards to policy-based management, it's like there is all sorts of work that's going in that direction. So we're moving in the right direction, but it's like making sure all the pieces link up. It's like, that takes time.
Well, and it's the challenge of not harming the data in the process. I think it's the challenge of not only just updating, but being able to roll back.
Yeah.
We don't think about this much as developers. It's pretty trivial to go, put up that version. No, roll back to the old version. But in a database, that's really challenging.
Exactly. It's like going back, it's like rolling back a mistake is really expensive, or can be really expensive. It was interesting. It's like we had a lot of discussions actually at this conference during one of the sessions was right now the tooling that we have doesn't protect you from making mistakes that are expensive at deployment time.
Right.
You still need to understand what kind of changes do you allow in your data tier? Are they easily deployable? What is your recovery strategy, etc. You still have to think about that.